There comes a moment when the world around you grows quiet, not in peace but in suspicion. The laughter that once surrounded your childhood dimmed. The warmth you were meant to feel in the presence of others never arrived. You were not loud. You were not rebellious. You were aware. Aware of the weight in a room. Aware of the truth behind a smile. Aware that there was something else behind all of this. You sat at tables full of people, but felt the ache of absence. You watched other children play while you listened to a voice inside that said, "This isn't your home." You wanted to belong, but you needed to understand. No one could quite explain it. Why you asked such deep questions. Why you never feared the dark. Why you spoke with an urgency no child should carry. You saw shadows before others saw movement. You felt betrayal before words were spoken. You sensed the war, even if you couldn't name the battlefield. It wasn't imagination, it wasn't coincidence, and it wasn't brokenness. It was marking. It was divine interruption. It was the early sign that heaven had whispered your name, long before you knew how to pronounce destiny. The rejection you faced, it was recognition in disguise, the isolation. That was training ground for discernment. The fear that visited you in the night, it wasn't yours. It was theirs. They could sense what you carried. From the very beginning, your life refused to fit into normal, and somewhere deep down, you always knew you weren't made to blend in. You were made to wake others up. What if the pain was permission? What if the silence was a signal? What if the strangeness you hated was the signature of the one who called you first? If you're still pretending this didn't strike something ancient in you, subscribe now. And if not, enter the comments and tell us why the truth made you uncomfortable. You are not too broken. You are not too late. You are not too much or too far gone. They told you your emotions were a weakness, but they were antennas. They told you your silence was passivity, but it was consecration. They told you your hunger for meaning was childish, but it was a compass pulling you toward your mantle. The ache that followed you into adulthood, that was never disorder. It was the echo of assignment. You are not a misfit. You are a forerunner. You are not a problem to be fixed. You are a weapon forged in secret. You are not just surviving life. You were sent to disturb darkness. You carry weight. You carry sight. You carry a name hell recognizes and heaven refuses to forget. You didn't stumble into life. You were sent into it, undercover, uncelebrated, unassuming, until now. You are a warrior, but not with clenched fists, with clean hands and a hidden flame. You are a witness, not of stories told, but of fires walked through. You are a vessel, not because you are perfect, but because you were emptied early, so he could fill you fully. The dreams that were stolen, the words they never said, the rooms you weren't invited into, every ounce of it was working for this moment. God did not waste your childhood. He buried clues in it, and now he's calling them out. The old you was the cocoon. This is the unmasking, the rising, the stepping into a name that's older than your wounds. You were chosen early because your impact will be eternal. You were tested before others noticed you, because heaven couldn't risk you being ordinary. It's not pride to rise. It's disobedience to stay hidden. So come out of the shadows, wipe your face, adjust your crown, and take your place. Subscribe if this identity feels like home, and if it doesn't, tell us in the comments why hiding feels safer. They didn't see you. Not really. They saw a problem to manage, not a calling to protect. You were marked early, and the enemy knew it. So he didn't come with fangs and fire. He came through silence, through systems, through people who should have known better. The teacher who labeled you too much. The parent who called your discernment disrespect. The pastor who mistook your hunger for rebellion. They weren't always cruel, but they were blind. Blind to what God was birthing in you, and what hell was trying to bury. You learned early that survival required shrinking. So you did. You made yourself quiet to keep the peace. You learned to laugh when you wanted to weep. You made friends with people who only loved your mask, because the truth of you was too weighty for them to carry. But deep down, you knew, you always knew, that something sacred was being stolen. You were not loud, you were alert, you were not defiant, you were discerning. But in the war for your identity, your gift became a liability. So you buried it. You buried your voice beneath politeness. You buried your fire beneath performance. You buried your truth beneath trauma and called it strength. But what if that strength was actually a slow surrender? You started mistaking numbness for maturity. You wore exhaustion like a badge. You said, "I'm fine," so many times, even the mirror forgot how to call you out. And in that numbness, hell built altars. Altars of apathy, altars of delay, altars of disconnection from the one who never forgot your name. Demons didn't need to haunt your dreams, they just dressed like friends, smiled like mentors, spoke in spiritual cliches that made you question your own fire. You called them safe, but they were assignments, sent to drain you slowly until you'd forget you were ever dangerous to begin with. And you, so desperate to belong, let them in. Not because you were weak, but because you were tired. Tired of always being the deep one. Tired of always sensing what others ignored. Tired of the silence after you spoke truth. So, you let your oil leak for people who never carried a lamp. You shared your vision with those who couldn't see beyond convenience, and you stayed in rooms that tolerated your presence but despised your purpose. But it wasn't just them. Some traps wore your own face. You thought staying invisible was humble. You thought letting people walk over your convictions was love. You thought emotional silence was spiritual maturity. But all along, you were trading your roar for their comfort. Can you see it now? The spiritual traps weren't just obstacles, they were confirmations. Proof that even in childhood, you were a target. Not because you were weak, but because you were marked. If you recognize these traps, subscribe and break agreement with them. If you don't, drop a comment. Tell us what's still whispering to you. You thought your pain disqualified you. But heaven saw it as proof. That ache in your chest from childhood, that wasn't random. It was reconnaissance. A signal in the spirit that you were chosen before you had language for it. Before you had mentors. Before you had clarity, you had pain. And pain was the prophecy. You didn't survive all that to play small. You didn't crawl out of that pit just to decorate it. You were trained in fire, and the fire didn't consume you. It commissioned you. You think you're tired? No, you're tempered, like steel in a furnace, like a sword in the hands of a warrior. The heat didn't break you, it forged you. Do you not remember? Moses didn't lead at 30. He was commissioned at 80. Anna didn't prophesy in her youth. She prayed through decades of silence. Paul wasn't trusted when he was impressive. He was trusted when he was crushed. So tell me again why you think you're too late. Your maturity is not a liability. It's leverage. You've seen things, felt things. Walked through deserts others are still mapping. That's not baggage. That's blueprint. The reason hell has been trying to convince you to sit down is because your very presence is a rebuke to passivity, to lukewarmness, to spiritual sleepwalkers who confuse silence with sanctity. You've been watching the world burn while the church naps. You've been biting your tongue while compromise dresses itself as wisdom. You've sat in rooms that forgot what holy ground feels like, but something inside you never forgot. Because fire recognizes fire, and now the Spirit is stirring that flame again. Not to entertain, not to impress, but to ignite. You weren't built for polite Christianity. You weren't born for casual belief. You are a legacy carrier, the kind that doesn't just quote the word, but bleeds it. So no, this is not your retirement. This is your refinement. This is the season where your scars speak louder than your resume, where your tears have more weight than your titles, where the oil on your life costs too much to waste on shallow. It's time to rise, to refuse the numbness, to shake off the agreements with timidity, to walk like you carry heaven inside your bones, because you do. You've been called, you've been crushed, and now you're being crowned. Subscribe if you're ready to be refined. If not, comment how long you'll let comfort keep you quiet. Not everyone can go with you. That's not arrogance. That's obedience. Some connections were only meant to carry you to the gate, not through it. And some tables you keep trying to sit at are beneath the weight of your mantle. They crack under the oil you carry because they were never built to hold it. This is the season of sacred separation, not because you're better, but because you're becoming. You have to stop apologizing for your anointing. Stop shrinking your light to make others feel more comfortable in their shadows. Stop explaining your boundaries to people who benefit from your burnout. You are allowed to say no, without guilt, without explanation, without a 10-paragraph justification that dilutes your conviction. You don't need permission to guard your oil. You need courage to stop leaking it. You weren't called to entertain. You were called to consecrate. You were never meant to be accessible to everyone. Jesus had 12. He confided in 3, and he still slipped away to be alone with the Father. What makes you think you can run with crowds and carry the cross at the same time? There's a weight on your life, a calling that cannot be negotiated with comfort. You've been trying to blend in when you were born to be set apart, trying to be relatable when you were wired to be reverent. Let them mislabel you. Let them misunderstand your silence. Let them say you've changed, because you have. You're not chasing stages anymore. You're chasing the secret place. You're not building platforms. You're building altars. This is the hour where obedience matters more than optics, where purity matters more than popularity, where private devotion becomes more sacred than public validation. And yes, you will lose people, friends, followers, familiarity. But what you'll gain: fire, clarity, heaven's trust. God is not calling you to be famous, He's calling you to be faithful. So walk away when the Spirit says walk. Be still when the Spirit says wait. Speak up when the Spirit says shout. Even if your voice shakes, let your silence speak louder than their noise. Let your absence from the wrong rooms be a sign you've chosen the narrow path. Let your obedience become your resistance. You're not rejecting people, you're responding to purpose. So guard your oil. Anointing was never cheap, and you've cried too many tears to keep handing it to people who trample what they don't understand. This is your consecration, not a curse, a commissioning. Solitude isn't punishment. It's the stage where the Spirit teaches you how to war. It's the soil where roots run deep, where character gets louder than charisma, where heaven starts to whisper secrets the crowds were never meant to hear. So pull back, go deeper, burn quieter, and when the time comes, walk back out with fire in your bones. Subscribe if you're done apologizing for your anointing. If not, comment what still makes you crave applause over assignment. Look ahead, not just to tomorrow, but to eternity. Because that boundary you just set, it didn't only protect your peace, it protected your children's children from patterns you were bold enough to break. That yes to obedience when it hurt, it wasn't just for you, it was for the ones you'll never meet, the ones who will walk freer because you chose not to flinch. You thought it was just a prayer in the dark? No, it was a seed, buried in faith, watered in tears, and destined to bloom in a generation that may never know your name, but will live off your intercession. You think hell doesn't tremble when you say yes to God in secret? It does, because your obedience today builds a highway for deliverance tomorrow. You are not just surviving, you are rewriting bloodlines. You are heaven's resistance against generational decay. You are proof that curses break when someone finally stands up and says, "Not in my house." Your no to sin is not a denial of pleasure. It's a declaration of war against what tried to kill your family for decades. And your yes to God is not small. It echoes into eternity. Every time you chose to pray instead of panic, you told the next generation what trust looks like. Every time you forgave when bitterness felt justified, you showed them how freedom feels. Every time you kept your covenant when culture told you to run, you planted legacy in soil deeper than trends. Your life is not random, it's reverberating through time. You are the hinge on which someone else's door will swing open. And the cost you carry today, it's making it lighter for someone else to breathe tomorrow. Don't trade eternal reward for temporary applause. Don't protect comfort if it costs your crown. You may not be invited to every table now, but you're preparing a seat in heaven with your name etched in scars and surrender. Don't you see? The pain wasn't punishment, it was preparation. So that when you speak, chains break. So that when you pray, walls fall. So that when you walk into rooms, hell remembers your lineage and backs away. Your life was meant to echo, not just in this life, but in the ones that come after. Your yes is a hammer, your faith is a chisel, and your legacy. It is the cathedral being carved in the spirit by every choice you make when no one is watching. You are not late. You are not forgotten. You are not wasted. You are becoming the ancestor someone else prayed for. And your ceiling, that will be someone else's floor. Because you chose surrender over spectacle, integrity over impulse, holiness over hype. This isn't just about now. This is about forever. Subscribe if you're ready to live for legacy. If not, comment below what temporary thing you're still protecting. You are not fading. You are not forgotten. You are not a whisper lost in the noise. You are becoming flame. This fire in your bones? It was never meant to stay hidden. You were not built for silence. You were forged for sound. For shouts that tear veils, for truth that breaks chains, for prayers that rattle the bones of demons and declare war on every lie that ever called you small. Let every no be sacred now. No to compromise, no to delay. No to that pitiful voice that says, "You're not ready." Because ready was never the requirement. Obedience was, and you know it. You've cried long enough. Now roar. Roar until your breath runs out. Roar until fear remembers it has no hold. Roar until every dormant gift in you wakes up like thunder. Roar like someone who knows their blood carries prophecy. Roar because hell should have killed you when it had the chance. You are not just surviving anymore. You are a walking reckoning. You are heaven's rebuttal to every generation of silence, addiction, fear, passivity, and pain. You are not alone. You are aligned. And you were never called to crawl through life, hoping not to be noticed. You are built to stand, to war, to intercede, to lead, to rebuild ancient ruins with tears in your eyes and a sword in your hand. This is not retirement. It is refinement. This is not the end. It is the unveiling, so rise. Not as the one culture tried to tame, but as the one God has always known you to be. Let the lukewarm tremble. Let the slumbering stir. Let the watchers weep. Because a warrior is waking. And it's you. Your time is now. The clock isn't ticking against you. It's ticking for you. And heaven is holding its breath to see what you'll do with this holy awakening. So pick up your mantle. Speak like fire. Move like thunder. And refuse to leave this world quiet. If this confirmed what your spirit already knew, subscribe to Pope Leo XIV Unveiled. If not, tell us in the comments why you're still waiting to become what you already are.